As you all know, back in June of this year, Gateway Church engaged the law firm Haynes & Boone to conduct an independent investigation related to the childhood sexual abuse of Cindy Clemishire by our former senior pastor, Robert Morris. Haynes & Boone has completed their work, and their findings have been presented to the members of a subcommittee that was formed to receive and act on this information. This subcommittee of the board is made up of myself, Kenneth Fambro, and Dane Miner, who are sitting here behind me. They also continue to serve as elders of Gateway Church. Today, I'm going to share with you, as members of Gateway Church, a summary of the facts that we have learned. First, what happened to Cindy Clemishire was heartbreaking and vile, and we denounce sexual abuse in all of its forms. And we feel deep sorrow for those who have been victimized by such despicable actions. But I do want to take a minute and acknowledge her bravery in coming forward and telling her story to bring awareness to this issue. She has impacted countless lives. And because of her courage, the three of us in particular have had several people come up to us and tell us that they had their own stories where they were victims. And Cindy gave them the courage to come forward and seek help. And so we continue to pray for healing, not just for her, but for those who have been abused that are a part of our family. Over the years, Robert Morris shared his version of this story, that he was unfaithful in his marriage while in his early 20s. And according to his version, Robert confessed his sin to apostolic leaders in the late 1980s, many years before Gateway Church was formed. He stepped down from ministry for 2 years and then was restored back into ministry with the blessing of those same apostolic leaders. We as a church knew what our former senior pastor shared publicly, and many people, including myself, simply believed his version of the story. But on June 14th of this year, Cindy Clemishire shared her story publicly, clearly stating that she was the one referred to in Robert Morris's story that he had described as a sexual affair. And contrary to Robert's version, Cindy was not a consenting adult, but rather a child of 12 and a victim of sexual abuse. Furthermore, she shared that the sexual abuse happened on multiple occasions over 4.5 years. And on the same evening of June 14th, Robert Morris directed Gateway employees to release a statement that intended to minimize the severity of Cindy's claims in a final attempt to conceal the truth. And as you know, our Gateway family was rocked by these revelations. Over the next 48 hours, the elders were able to independently verify critical elements of Cindy's story, enabling us to move forward and swiftly confront Robert Morris. And when we insisted on meeting with him, he immediately resigned. But despite his resignation, we knew that further investigation was needed. And we knew that we as elders did not have the objectivity or the qualifications to properly investigate. So Haynes & Boone was chosen because they are deeply experienced with conducting internal investigations, and this inquiry had to be truly independent, meaning it was conducted by a law firm with no prior connection to Gateway Church or any individuals involved. They were given full access to our staff and internal communications. But we also knew from the beginning that this report would have certain limitations. A number of senior leaders had transitioned out of Gateway over its 24-year history, and we had no power to compel anyone to participate in this investigation if they chose not to. And to date, we've had 6 individuals who have declined to meet with Haynes & Boone, one of those being Robert Morris. Haynes & Boone briefed this subcommittee, and we want to share a summary of the facts that we learned from their investigation. For starters, you should know that none of us on the subcommittee had ever heard of any sexual abuse allegations against Robert Morris until June, when Cindy Clemishire shared her story. Haynes and Boone's specific task was to conduct an independent investigation into both the conduct of Robert Morris, but not limited to just Cindy Clemishire, and what was known and when by various individuals who have served in leadership throughout Gateway's history. Our church cooperated fully. Haynes and Boone was very thorough and diligent in their work. And during the course of their inquiry, Haynes and Boone's collected 780 gigabytes of data. They reviewed thousands of pages of documents and emails, and they interviewed more than 24 individuals. In total, hundreds and hundreds of hours were expended on this investigation. Confidentiality agreements, where they had been in place with former employees and relevant, were released. And as I said before, there were 6 individuals who refused to cooperate with Haynes and Boone in an in-person interview. We are relieved to share with you that in the course of their investigation, Haynes and Boone did not learn of any other allegations of sexual assault by Robert Morris. No other abuse by him has been reported or uncovered by Haynes and Boone. And at this time, to our knowledge, there are no other victims of Robert Morris beyond Cindy Clemishire. However, we want to be very clear to those of you sitting here today, and to those of you who are with us, who are not with us, but who may hear and read of our comments. If you or anyone you know is a victim of sexual abuse by a current or former leader of this church, and you have not felt comfortable sharing your story, we ask that you please do so. You can go to the police first, and if it's information that you believe we as leadership of Gateway need to know, you can contact us directly at connect@gatewayelders.com. Your email will be held in the strictest of confidence. And to anyone out there, if you were a victim of sexual abuse as a child, I want you to know you cannot consent to sexual abuse or sexual activity as a child. No child ever can. Don't let the belief that it was consensual stop you from coming forward. We want to create a culture where individuals feel safe reporting abuse and any other serious issues. We learned from this investigation about what elders knew before June 14th, 2024, and what actions they took or failed to take. And we now know that there were elders and employees at Gateway who knew before June 14th, 2024, that Cindy was 12 at the time the abuse began. Additionally, we also learned there were other individuals who were notified in the years prior to June 14th, 2024, about allegations of abuse, but they failed to inquire further. In other words, there are 2 groups. There's one group of individuals that knew without a doubt that Cindy Clemishire was 12 when the abuse began. And there's a second group who knew of allegations of sexual abuse by Robert Morris, who had enough information that they should have led them to ask more questions, but they did not. Both groups are fundamentally wrong and simply cannot and will not be tolerated at this church. As a result, we have decided to draw a very bright line here based on biblical and moral standards and our values as a church family. And we can report to you that as of today, no individual in either group serves as an elder, is employed by, or works at Gateway Church. They have been removed. Many of you may be wanting more specific details. You need to know that Gateway Church is currently the target of various pending and/or threatened litigation matters, including financial demands that we have received from Robert Morris, which, to be clear, we are rejecting. And you also need to know that Gateway Church is currently and fully cooperating with an ongoing criminal investigation, the details of which we cannot share at this time, and it prohibits us from saying more. We can share with you that the church nor its current leadership are subjects of this criminal investigation. These past 4.5 months have been a difficult and challenging time for us as a church family. But it's also shown amazing strength and beauty. And the time has come for us to look ahead. And today we are making a decision on the things we will do as a church to be better. As Pastor Levi said last week, which I loved, our pain will not be our template. So in practical terms, we're working diligently to review our internal systems to make sure that all of our ministries and operations carry the highest standards for excellence, integrity, and safety. And we have examined our governance processes here at Gateway, and the truth is that the events of the last few months have demonstrated that there was a massive governance failure and accountability failure here at our church. It was a failure of culture. And we must be honest with ourselves and acknowledge that our culture allowed the truth to be buried for far too long. When a church becomes centered around one pastor alone, it's lost its way. And unfortunately, we have come to the realization over the last few months that at some point in the past, the culture here at Gateway became one where power was centralized, and the leader at the top was surrounded by people who wanted to protect him, some of them at all cost. This unchecked leadership approach goes precisely against the scriptural instruction given in Mark 10:42 through 44, where Jesus instructs us to serve one another, just as he came to serve and not to be served. There are things that we as a church can and will do in the coming days and weeks and months to ensure that we have a culture of accountability where something like this can never happen again. And we must accept that this was a massive governance failure, and we must be proactive in providing strong and independent governance by implementing checks and balances on future pastors and church leaders. So in that spirit, we are working currently to make significant changes to our church's bylaws. And this is still a work in progress, but I do want to mention a couple of specific areas of interest where we are making these revisions. First, we will no longer have apostolic elders at this church. We have concluded that this office of apostolic elders as designed did not and does not work for us. We have already eliminated this office. Second, we will no longer have staff members serve as elders at Gateway Church, with the exception of our future senior pastor and potentially an executive pastor, but both of them would serve in a non-voting capacity. We believe that the voting members of the Board of Elders should be comprised of only individuals who are not employed by the church and who do not ultimately report to a senior pastor. We must bring independence and objectivity to the eldership, and it has been lacking in the years past. Some of you are wondering if these governance issues or failures carried over to the church's finances. And I don't want to spend too much time discussing our finances today, but I would like to summarize a few points for you because I believe they are important. I can state clearly and definitively that Gateway Church does in fact have audited financial statements for the past 19 years using independent outside auditors. And according to these audited statements, and contrary to what has been alleged by former employees and in online rumors, Gateway has averaged approximately 19% in giving to global missions. I would like to say that again. Gateway Church has averaged approximately 19% in giving to global missions. And to be clear, our global missions department includes giving to local, regional, national, and international ministries. That percentage does include some overhead cost to manage these mission efforts. Additionally, if you total all of the dollars that have actually gone out the door from Gateway Church over the last 19 years to missional efforts, the number is approximately $200 million. I want to just pause for a minute and recognize your giving has had an impact in a major way, $200 million. We won't know, we can't know this side of heaven the impact that those dollars have had, and no doubt there will be people in heaven as a result of those gifts. Thank you. Thank you to you for your generosity. I do want to address that there have been questions and rumors about the finances in this topic. And I did mention a few weeks ago, we are going to hire an independent accounting firm to perform some very specific and focused forensic work to ensure that our accounting was done correctly. And I will report back to you when that work has been completed. It is amazing to me that God, in his infinite wisdom, decided to use a collection of imperfect people organized in an imperfect institution as his way to spread the gospel. Yet that's what he does. He uses his church to spread the gospel. As I was driving into church yesterday and preparing for this message, Psalms 92 came to mind. It's verse 12 and 13, and it says, "Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing to declare that the Lord is upright." We must learn from the mistakes of our past, or we will be doomed to repeat them. And an honest assessment of our church reveals that, like so many churches today, we became too metric-driven, too focused on a single individual. We also became less relational, and we moved away from the original intention of church. And this is perhaps the defining problem of churches today. And we must reject the temptation to measure a church's success simply on attendance and giving. Metrics, while good, do not accurately measure the health of a church. We must be a church focused on making disciples of the nations and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. And thank you. We also need to be a beacon of light in our communities, especially now. So when I survey the evidence that was presented to us a few weeks ago, I am shocked that this story did not come out sooner. There were emails in 2011 sent to a number of people, including some media outlets, with Cindy's story. I'm not going to suggest to you in any way that God allowed that to happen without a purpose. I believe in his wisdom and his mercy, he's using this timing for us as a church to have a reset. He has graciously given us the opportunity to refocus as a church and return to him. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that I believe he's doing a transformative work here at Gateway. And it reminds me of the Israelites being in bondage in Egypt. And for far too long, the Israelites had become uncomfortably comfortable with their circumstances. But God had other plans for them. He had plans to move them to a new home. And as a church, God is moving us to a new place. Our theology and beliefs are not changing. But I do believe that God is calling us to change how we practice our beliefs. And as a church, we need to be about making disciples of the nations, which is much more difficult to measure. This house needs to be a place where everyone feels welcome and that they can experience the love of Jesus. Church needs to be more than just attending a weekly service. It needs to be about doing life together as a family in groups. I know that you've experienced and seen this difference over the last 4 months. I have. When you come to our worship nights or the community nights, there's a real sense of family in this place. My wife and I have a saying around our house that we say progress over perfection. And I believe in that same idea as it relates to this transformation that the Lord is taking us through. Just as he guided the Israelites, so will he guide us in this season, one step at a time, progress. And just as he guided them as a nation, so will he guide us as a church family. We will get through this transformation together. I am so thankful for this church. And I truly believe and know that our best days are ahead. We are healing as a church family, and we are rebuilding our foundation with the instructions of our Lord Jesus, that we are to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we must love our neighbors as ourselves. Thank you. Thank you, Gateway Church family. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your belief in Gateway's future. Thank you for your prayers for us as we navigate these waters. Thank you for the sweet notes that we've received from you. Thank you to those of you that have come up and told us that you're praying for us. There is no way the three of us would have gotten through the last 4.5 months without your prayers. And we believe that God has entrusted us with an important part, us, the church, an important part of building his kingdom. The three of us do endeavor to be good stewards of that responsibility, and we commit to you to look to him as we do this. And we look to him for his guidance as we serve you. May God bless you, and may God bless this church.